Hello and welcome to the Giving Voice to Depression podcast. I'm Terry, the creator and co-host of this podcast. I've lived with depression most of my life, and I know how easy it can be to feel all alone in the experience. I'm not alone, and you aren't either.
And I'm Dr. Anita Sands, a licensed clinical psychologist with a number of my own diagnoses, all of which bring a certain amount of anxiety and depression along with them. There is great power in shared experiences. We share our own as we engage in intimate and candid conversations with our weekly guests, exploring different perspectives on and experiences with depression.
We keep it real because depression is real. We keep it hopeful because there truly is hope, in spite of what depression tells you. This podcast is produced in partnership with Recovery.com. Recovery.com provides resources and information for individuals seeking treatment for mental health or addiction issues. Its website is a fact-checked and vetted online platform of treatment centers to help individuals find the right path to recovery. This episode is sponsored by the A.B. Korkor Foundation for Mental Health.
Hi, Terry.
Hello, Anita. So last week we introduced you to Jeannie, the mother of a young man, Jake Pasamato, who, among many other things, died by suicide when he was 26 years old. She shared about his gifted mind and huge caring heart. She also shared that at the tender age of just 7, he declared that he did not like the world with all its anger and meanness, and that he found it just too heavy to carry. Jake repeatedly told her that one day he would end his own life.
Today, we are looking at how 6 years after her shocking but not surprising loss, those are Jeannie's words, she is still working to keep hope alive for other young people. Not as penance for any mistakes that she believes she made. She and her son Jake were very close and had a very open communication. But because she knows that without support, battling depression and other mental health conditions would be even more difficult. So here again is Jeannie, giving her voice to depression.
Jake was a big part of a big car community centered around drifting,
which is events that primarily take place at venues such as US Air in Shawano, Wisconsin, which was Jake's home track, which there are tracks all around the United States and in other countries where kids do this. But it's on a closed course, and I liken it to, when you drive in the snow and the rear end of your car gets away from you, you drive into it. And this is what these kids all do on purpose. They get out on the track and they make the rear end of their car swing one way and they drive into it and they look like they're driving sideways. And I mean, it's a huge culture. It's one of the coolest things. And from day one, Jake brought us along. And after Jake passed away, we waited a month to hold his memorial service. And the car community that he's part of had an event scheduled for that weekend. And they asked if they could make it a memorial event for Jake. So that became Rio Bash. Jake's nickname was Rio. Don't ask me why. To this day, couldn't tell you. We have no idea how he got that nickname. But that was his nickname, Rio.
Rio Bash has become an annual event in Jake's honor to raise awareness for mental health and the need to be there for each other.
We had shirts made and we put the hashtag check on your friends because we decided that we wanted people to remember to look out for one another. And if anybody could do that, this car community was such a big, tight community, a big family, if you will. And I always tell all these kids, I say, Jake knew what he was doing when he dragged us along to the track because he left us in good hands with all of you.
If you listened last week, you know that a hashtag check on your friends bumper sticker is how we connected with Jeannie. We saw it on a truck, asked the driver, who turned out to be one of Jake's friends, if it was a suicide prevention message, and were connected with Jeannie.
We ship those check on your friends stickers worldwide. They are in more countries and more little towns and more little villages. And not a week goes by that I don't get messages from people who say, hey, do you have those? Can I get them? I saw one on a car, or I heard about it, or I saw a post that somebody shared. We need that. And so that's how we share hope. And I know that there's hope because of how that happens.
I have You Matter stickers on my car and previously my truck. And I was at a AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, walk, and a woman came to my table and she was crying, which you see a lot of there, as you would expect. And she said that it was the 16th anniversary of her attempt and that she wasn't sure she could attend this event, that it might be too much for her, and that she wasn't even sure that she was glad she was still here 16 years later. And she said, I said out loud, show me a sign.
Oh!
And she said, I drove by a truck and I read the little sticker and it says, You Matter. And I said, was it navy blue? And she looks at me and I point over my shoulder because I was parked right there to get the tent and everything out of it. And she said, oh my God, I drove by you.
Yeah.
And I said, you did. And I'm so glad you're here.
Yeah.
So it really is interesting. And I say, like, I don't want to talk in bumper stickers. You know, it seems trite, but it's not. It's if it's just what you need to see
Right.
at just the right time, it is wildly impactful.
Agreed. And I believe that we get nudged in the direction we need to get nudged in. I really, really do believe that. Like you said, it's super impactful, and you never know, like, who you're going to make a difference for.
Yeah.
You never know. But I really believe that that's kind of how it happens.
Jeannie and her husband Pete, Jake's stepfather, have been nudged far beyond shipping bumper stickers around the world. They use money raised at Rio Bash to fund their other mental health support efforts.
More and more, I see this community being more and more comfortable with looking out for one another. And it's less of, like 6 years ago when Jake Furtz passed away, you know, people were it was very tenuous to try to reach out to someone and not feel like a weirdo or feel like you're being pushy or whatever. And now it's a thing. It's an amazing thing to watch happen because everybody looks out for one another. And throughout the year, we support people who are struggling. We pay rent, we pay groceries, we give kids gas money, we pay for therapy sessions, you name it. If somebody reaches out to us and tells us they're struggling, there is no condition or no form to fill out. There's no questions asked. There's just us asking how we can support them. And we help them fund whatever it is they need to help keep them on their feet. And so 100% of the money that we make goes back into that community. And not just into the community of kids we've met and kids that we know, but in the true check on your friends, pay it forward thing. The kids in this community will reach out to us and say, hey, I know that so-and-so isn't part of the car community, but they're really struggling. And I don't know who else to reach out to see if we can get them some help. So that pay it forward thing, or that light that gets shown on somebody else, works that way too. So that's how we push it out into the community and pay the community back, I guess, for how they've supported us.
Jeannie describes support as keeping our hands on one another's backs. A simple phrase and gesture with a potentially profound impact.
And, you know, I've had a lot of kids say to me over time, you know, it's really hard if I'm struggling to check on somebody else. And so last year we talked a lot about the light that you shine, the light that you carry. When you shine that on somebody else, it's kind of a cool thing about how that light shines back at you and lifts you up. And so all of those things kind of happen under that umbrella.
That Check on Your Friends umbrella was originally opened to shelter the car community that lost more than Jake.
Prior to Jake going, 3 of his friends in his closer circle of people in the car community left of their choice. And in 2015, one of his very greatest friends made that choice. And I was scared every moment after that we would lose Jake immediately after that. And then there was Jake. And since then, there have been 3 others. So Jake is one of 7 in his closer car community. And I worry that there is this phenomena among people who make that decision. But maybe you understand what I mean when I say that.
There is a contagion effect.
Yes.
And we see it after celebrity suicides. And that's why it's so important to responsibly report on those and to always let people know that there are resources available and such. What I've also learned is that there is really equally strong and evidence-based research that there is a contagion effect to hope.
Yeah.
And that if we say, I was there and I chose to stay, I was there and I got help and I am living a life worth living, that is also, in quotes, contagious.
110,000% I agree with you. And I think that is the underpinning of where we are now with Check on Your Friends. And I really struggle with this whole thing where people are like, oh, you're so strong. How do you do it? Well, yeah, that's a little bit of it. But it's also my mission to stop that contagion, because that's not the answer. And I never want to portray Jake's leaving as that, because there is hope.
And when Jeannie talks with kids, as she calls them, she offers hope and understanding and her time and resources so that they're aware of available options.
If I've heard it once, I've heard it 100 times. I can tell you things that I can't tell my own parents. And I know that I am safe in telling you. My lifelong career was in education, and I was a behavior intervention specialist. And I worked with kids who struggled with emotional and behavioral inability in the school system. And so I always preface every conversation with someone who comes to me with their troubles, and I will say, I am not a therapist. I am not a psychiatrist, and I will listen to everything you have to say. And at the end of the conversation, I'm going to give you resources so that you can hopefully seek out whatever support you need. And kids know that I'm going to do that. They know that they're going to hear from me, and I'm going to follow up with them and say, here's all the information. Here's what you can access in your area. Here are places with sliding scale fees. Here are, free services. I will do everything in my power to guide a kid or a young person or a young adult, whoever, in the right direction, because I know that that's not my profession. But I also, on the flip side, will listen to anybody who is struggling so that we can open that door and start the process of them feeling like they have some sort of a safety net.
Being heard is a safety net. Having someone to call who you know will listen, understand, and care is also a safety net.
I really believe that I believe we have to swing back around to loving people for who they are. And I think that less judgment and more love creates that spot so we can hold those doors open for other people. And if you asked any of the thousands of people who follow me or who are connected to us because of Rio Bash, they will tell you that I tell them that I love them without hesitation. And whether I've met you or not, I think you need to hear that. And I think people need to hear that they're loved, because I think we've gotten away from that as a world, as a society. And I really believe that opens the door to just a lot of other possibilities for hope in people's lives. And I think it's okay to tell people that you love them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I have learned, too, in these last 6 years that you can only do as much as you can do.
And everything you do matters.
Exactly. And it does. And it does.
That love and support are not only the ways a mother is found to spread hope and help prevent suicide, they're the ways this mother has found to honor the way her son lived.
I feel like wherever Jake is, he must be grinning his ass off at all this stuff. And, he shows up a lot. He's really quite a loud and rowdy spirit. And not just for me. I will have people I've never met who will message me and say, I am absolutely certain Jake was here with me today. And I'm like, I'm sure he was. I am sure he was. Because that's just Jake.
Oh, it's so beautiful and so sad at the same time.
It is. It is. I guess I would be lying if I said I didn't cry probably 6 days out of 7. But also, not all 6 of those days are sad tears.
Terry, I always seem to say after so many episodes that we do, I think this is my favorite one, but I really felt that way about this one because Jeannie is just like this normal person who took this awful tragedy and she spun out of it so much hope and this non-judgmental support and caring for others and improving awareness and trying to create a safety net for people who are struggling. And she did all of this with this really beautiful feeling of unconditional love for others as well as for herself and what she had gone through trying to help her son. And she was doing all of this too while grieving. This is something that we don't want to say, oh, she's like a superhuman. She's a normal person. She was grieving. She just said, I'm going to do this with my grief and while I'm grieving, not instead of it, and not in spite of it, just really did it with it.
And from the very beginning. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I'm in awe. I'm so profoundly grateful for her, for people like her, for Jake. I'm so grateful and in awe of his being willing to battle this for so many years as well. So, as I was thinking, what do I want our listeners to remember or to know if it's not even something that they know just yet? So I just felt really called to put out a few reminders. So no matter, who you are or where you're tuning in from and what you're going through, this is for each one of you. I want to remind you that you are worthy, that you are worthwhile, that you are worth loving, you are worth supporting, you are worth being with, you are worth interacting with, and you are valid and deserving of life and love and anything that you need to make life worth living. That's just a message that I really wanted to make sure that went out this week.
I think when I hear this episode, I might rewind and play that again, because hearing you say that, I was welling up a little bit. I was trying really hard to take it in because my brain fights those messages too.
Mm-hmm. And they're really important messages. And they are, of course, the ones that get lost and drowned out by, depression and other mental illnesses. And it's just important. If you need to rewind it, you need to re-listen to it. Do it as many times as you need. But it's all true. Those are the real true facts about yourself.
And depression certainly negates them. It not only, creates so much noise in our minds that we don't hear it, but if we hear it, we sort of push it away and say, well, that's not true about me. And it's true about everybody.
It is. It is the truth. And we're always trying to fight depression's lies.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I personally, not that I'm deeply struggling right now, but I'm struggling enough that I needed to hear that. So thank you. Also want to just remind anybody who's interested in following Jeannie's work or connecting with that community, it's primarily on Instagram with the hashtag #CheckOnYourFriends, which is great advice.
We truly hope that our podcast brings a little more understanding, helps you better articulate and reflect on your own experience with depression, or better understand how to support someone else who is struggling.
If this episode has been of comfort or value to you, know that there are hundreds of others like it in our archive, which you can easily find at our website, givingvoicetodepression.com. And remember, if you're struggling, speak up, even if it's hard. If someone else is struggling, take the time to listen.